So I think we'll have some folks trailing in. But for this last segment, we really wanted to have a dialogue, to continue the dialogue. That is, a lot of what today has been about learning from a lot of the experts that have come to to talk about their projects or their programs or their work. And as we discussed over the lunch breakout sessions, a lot of what complements that is the discussion, the dialogue from you and with you. And so we really tried to do both of those things because this is a really valuable opportunity, having those of you in the audience that are here to carry that dialogue forward. And about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, it dawned on me that we had something similar in 2006, as Dean Marriott mentioned this morning, and that Tom's referred to. And Tom's been doing this work for a long time, and Brad's been doing this work for a long time, and a lot of people have been doing this work for a great long time. And so having a discussion now is really part of a series of discussions. That's why it's so important to make sure that that's part of this. And so this last part is really just about having an open dialogue with you and talking about each of the breakout sessions and making sure that we all kind of hear what was similar in those breakout sessions, what was different, what were the prominent issues that people talked about, what was similar about those issues, and maybe what did we learn from those discussions. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to go through and we're going to ask each of our folks that took the lead on summarizing those breakout sessions, and we'll talk individually about what we learned. But before we do that, I just want to kind of give you guys just a little overview. A lot of the work that went into this this day was done by many volunteers. And so the GRIT, Green Roof Info Think Tank, has over time become a great resource for everyone, I think, being that it's community-based and very represented by folks in the industry. And so without that group, this day would probably look a lot different. So I do want to recognize John Crumrine, Elizabeth Hart, Desi Williams, Corey Omi, Courtney Sheback, Jason King, and my team, Brian Wethington, Amy Chomowitz, Tom Lipton, Linda Dobson, Alice Coker, Casey Cunningham. So lots of people. So one big question after this morning hearing Dan Vizzini was whether or not you talked to 3 people that you were supposed to talk to that you haven't met before. So if you haven't done that, I hope you do. At 4 o'clock, we'll be able to break and go to the vendor showcase, which is just outside. I hope you've been there already. But thanks to the fundraising or resource-raising efforts of the GRIT members, we have a keg of beer. Sponsored by Hub Brewing, which is really exciting, and that's really cool. That's Hub reaching out to us and saying that they appreciate the green roof industry and the green roof work. So that's pretty cool. And we'll also have some snacks and stuff. And from 4 to 6, it's just really enjoying ourselves and hanging out and networking. And then, okay. Most of you guys should have filled out one of those questionnaires, and there's a box on the front table in here with those raffle tickets. We have a number of books on the table outside, a Patrick Blanc book, a couple of Mike Hauk books, Ed Snodgrass's new book, and also Phillips has donated 5 bags of growing media, which is really, really cool. So we'll pull some tickets out of there, and you can walk home with any number of those prizes. So make sure if you haven't done that yet, that you take your questionnaire and put it in the box on the table. So we can go ahead and get started. I just want to ask these are our panelists in that they were nice enough to help lead and facilitate the discussions at the breakouts that I hope all of you were involved in. And maybe we can start down on the end and kind of come this way. Just maybe introduce yourself to those that don't know you and what you're doing here.
Can you guys hear me? My name is Jason King. I'm a landscape architect. I own a firm called TerraFluxus, and I've been doing green roofs for over 10 years now. And one of the founding members of GRIT, so I was obligated to come. But I'm here for the beer.
Hi, my name is Brian Wethington. I'm with the Bureau of Environmental Services, and I'm here because Matt asked me to be here yesterday. So now I'm here.
Hi, my name is Corey Omi, and I'm an architect with Ernie Munch Architect. And I am also a homeowner with now 4 Ecoroofs on our house and garage. So, and I enjoy designing and seeing them installed too, and installing them on our own house.
Sorry, my name's Liz Hart. I'm a green roof specialist with Tremco Building Envelope Materials and also a founding member of GRIT. Everybody check out GRIT if you haven't checked it out yet. And I'm here because I want to be here, not because anybody forced me to, but also for the free beer.
I also want to recognize Alan Profit, too, for helping out with facilitation of the group discussions. And so really what we wanted to do was make sure that we didn't lose anything from those discussions. And so, we've got a list of questions that we wanted to kind of suss out some of the answers and some of the feelings from the audiences. And it sounds like we had some really good discussions in each individual group. So what I'm going to ask is that each person on the panel talk about the major theme that they found in the discussion. And we'll kind of hear about all 4, and then we'll talk a little bit about how they intersect and how they differ. So you want to start, Jason?
Sure. So we had a pretty diverse group, and I want to thank Amy and Desi for helping to facilitate our group. We had people affiliated with some agencies. We had designers, homeowners, operation folks, contractors, both from all the way from residential scale up to public buildings. So it was a good range of things to talk about and a lot of issues. But when it came down to it, there was one sentence I had written down that really encapsulated it. It was like, what does it take for us to reduce and remove some of the doubts that keep us from moving forward on particular projects or for growing the industry? So that encompasses obviously a lot of things that we're going to hear, consistent themes throughout all the groups. Maintenance, costs, cost of maintenance, access to expertise, complexity of permitting processes. But when you boil it down, it's like when we were talking about return on investment and really getting the business case for green roofs, it's like what keeps a facility owner, a homeowner, or an architect or somebody developing a project, what keeps them from value engineering out a project or from not going forward on it? And that was kind of the theme that we kept going back to, and I'll fill in with some of the details later, but that was sort of the big driving factor.
All right, I think in similar way to Jason's group, also I'd like to point out John and Courtney. John Carmine and Courtney helped out in our group. And actually, since I'm a BES employee, I tried to leave it completely down there and to ask the questions and sort of keep the discussion going. But we kind of had 2 major themes that we ended up talking about mostly in our group. Again, like Jason's, it was what is preventing green roofs becoming more widely accepted and installed in Portland in particular. Cost, structural loading, things like that. But a couple of things that we focused on mostly were actually regulations, how regulations have both helped and hindered in some degree, whether it's incentives or other things like that, and the aesthetic expectations that people have placed on green roofs through these great photographs and all these great books that we see, that people have found that the expectations of clients and people who have them maybe are a little too high in some cases, and how can we adjust that, not only to make green roofs more widely accepted, but so that we can also look at different types of green roofs, whether it's habitat or gray or brown roofs, things like that. And then the second kind of big topic was what are the current perceptions of the cost and maintenance and liabilities related to eco-roofs. And the one interesting thing that really came out of that we talked a lot about was how the insurance industry has really affected our profession, and how some particular insurance companies require certain eco-roofs to meet a very specific standard that's driving up costs and difficulties. So those were sort of the big major themes.
So I'd also like to thank Alice, who was part of our facilitation of our group. We also kind of touched on the same major topics, obviously within the same context of a diverse group and of people in discussion. and we ended up talking, I guess, maybe a little bit more about the research and the information, the communication needed. And communication and education kept coming back to the discussion, and how and what we need to do, or what we need to educate on, and how we educate, and then how we share that information, and got into a discussion about the information is not necessarily one direction. It's actually 4 or 5 different directions, and that it's cross-pollination of that information to all the different people involved. And what that really comes down to is communication. And obviously, a lot of the things that we talked about have to do with communication and how we communicate. And a lot of the fears, or a lot of the issues with getting green roofs and eco-roofs built come down to educating about what they are, and getting every part of the group, every aspect of Ecoroof team on board with the reasons to do it, and understanding what those costs are early on, understanding what the benefits are, and understanding what the challenges are, and being upfront about those from the very beginning of the project, so that you don't find out halfway through something that you didn't expect, or some part of the team didn't expect. So really it's about communication. And then we also talked kind of in detail about how we can document what's already been done. So how do we get the information on the existing eco-roofs and get it into one format, or one place where it can be cross-referenced and referenced from all different parties involved. So it can be something which is some way self-regulating through peer groups in each part of the eco-roof community, so that installers can have information and input and get information back out of it, so that distributors and manufacturers of products can put information in and get information back out. Owners can get information in and back out. Designers can set up parameters and say, this is what I'm looking for, and then they can get information in it, or they can put in information of projects they've done and how they've worked, and then other people can get that information out. So it's all cross-communication, figuring out how does that happen, and I think that's a big challenge.
So my breakout session with Alan Profit and Tom Lipton helping to facilitate was a really good balance of the industry of suppliers, installers, designers, municipal representatives, and research, education. And I think what I love about the structure of this setup, the breakout sessions, is that everybody that's in attendance has such a wealth of knowledge. Everybody's bringing something to the table. So really, we only got to the first question, which is, what are the biggest barriers to more vegetated roofing? And I think similar themes came up, and it's the same thing that comes up at all of our GRIT meetings. A lack of education about why we do green roofs, what are the benefits and drawbacks, fears of maintenance, and of course cost. So a big issue about, first of all, just the perception of green roofs and not really understanding benefits and drawbacks. And then also very strong focus on the need for integrated design team, collaboration, everybody from all different walks, all different segments of the green roof industry, sitting down at the table together early on, either in the conceptual design phase of a green roof, or after a roof is installed and we need to get the lessons learned, what kind of return on investment is there, and a way to collect the data. And our group, I thought, had some really great solutions that, I don't know if we're talking about that now, or...
We can do that.
Okay, next.
You can go there.
So just a couple of things. For maintenance fears, something that kept coming up in our group is that it's really more about redefining maintenance and understanding what maintenance is. As a few of the speakers have mentioned, all roofs take maintenance, and they take a lot of maintenance. There's already a maintenance budget, or there should be, even for a traditional roof. So it's not necessarily that you're going to have this whole maintenance monster. It's really just shifting the perception of what your maintenance is going to be. And also a better understanding of existing vegetated roofs and what they're costing per square foot, and understanding the range with the different variables of roofs, and incorporating a maintenance budget into the very early design phases. But one of the coolest things that I think came out of our group is this idea of integrated design teams, not necessarily just design, but collaborations with architects, installers, maintenance crews, building owners, And then the concept of green roof commissioning, like the whole green roof commissioning, where you have one person who, or a group of people who are coordinating all of these different trades. I think a lot of organizations already have something similar to that. And then seeing the roof through the entire process, including the maintenance, and then collecting that data and feeding it back into the industry. It was also mentioned having a training or apprenticeship or a shadowing program where existing green roof professionals, since it is such a new industry and it's so interdisciplinary, where you have mentors, I guess, that would bring people along who want to be part of the industry, or maybe who only are doing one section of the industry, to where they get exposure to all the other areas. So you don't get these big surprises on the job site the first time a green roof is installed, like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna get the soil on the roof? Or what do we do when we have to store the plants for a month? And finally, wonderful suggestion of starting to bring together not just individuals, but groups. So like, why don't we create some sort of cross group, maybe this is a GRIT subcommittee, I don't know, of ASLA, AIA, GRIT, AWAMI, who else did we say? The National Roofing Contractors Association, NRCA, have representatives from those groups get together and start really compounding the collaboration process, where we're bringing so many different disciplines and representatives of the different experts, and then start to really jumpstart our understanding of the entire process and share that information. That's all.
Do you all want to talk about solutions as well? We can talk about them from each individual group if you'd like. Sure. Cor? Yeah. Oh yeah, we've got a question. Oh. Oh, of course. Yeah. I can get rid of the screen very easily. It should go off completely. Does that help? Okay, good.
We were trying to hide the fact that we already had access to the beer, but thanks.
The perks of the panel.
So, yeah, I mean, we really focused on the economic benefits and the return on investment. There's a lot of technical aspects, but when it comes down to it, it's like, how do you combine all of those things? And to me, there was a couple of great solutions that came out of that. One of them is taking our mass knowledge and making it, accessible and sort of cross-tabbed in a general way. I think, we have 400 plus projects in Portland that we could bring to the table to show examples of any different type of building, size roof, solution, both proprietary, a combination of things, using that data in a way that really synthesizes information that somebody could look at as a prospective owner, a prospective developer, an architect looking for more information, and can fine-tune it and hone in on the project that best fits their criteria. One of the problems we always run into with cost and solution is every roof is a little bit different. So how do we come up with consistency in what does a roof cost? How do you maintain it? So I think, coming to the fact that we're okay with, we don't have one solution, but that we have 400 projects that give us a wide range of potential solutions. And then in order to do that, it's sort of, we need to be really honest about the information that we're exchanging, because frankly, there's still a lot of bullshit that goes off around in the industry, and people are trying to sell stuff, people are trying to make money, people are trying to make a living designing, selling products, all of those things. But when it comes down to it, it's like honesty and kind of a collective discussion that's truthful and very honest is going to benefit all of us, because there isn't going to be but this person said this, and then this person said that, and why does this cost this much? And we can actually sit down with some of that. And taking that a bit further, there was a great suggestion in our group about people actually talking about what went wrong on a project. That would be novel. Tours of lessons learned of projects that happened around Portland, and being brutally honest about it, of we love our project, we did it, it's great, but, and then start talking about some of the things like, it was way too expensive, or, you know, this happened. It takes too much to maintain. And then a couple of specific things we talked about were, from a homeowner's perspective, using something like Solarize Portland, where you can do a collective group of homeowners that can come together, and if, say, you wanted to do 20 green roofs, residential scale green roofs in a neighborhood, they could share the cost and eliminate some of the economy of scale issues that you get with a small scale residential projects by buying and designing and installing all of these projects in that way. And there was a lot of other ones, but one of the things, I think Jim Labby was there from Audubon, he mentioned, when the incentive goes away, what are we going to do? It's like, so are there other ways that we can tap into resources like Metro, Nature and Neighborhood Capital Grants Program, like in more inventive ways to either replace the $5 a square foot or augment that to make some projects happen that maybe wouldn't. That's just a few. We had lots of them. But.
I think in trying to keep in similar themes to where Jason was going, one of the people in our group mentioned something. We were talking a little bit about ways to that $5 a square foot. How do you help share costs in some ways? And one of the suggestions was maybe like a co-op maintenance that might fit into sort of the same idea of co-op construction. You know, that same group of people, you might be able to have long-term shared maintenance costs that might reduce the overall costs of roofs long-term. And then maybe going back a little bit towards the maintenance, and even that $5 a square foot is potentially expanding the role of eco-roofs clearly within the city. The $5 a square foot is really not necessarily only, but it's sort of geared towards stormwater management. That was, I think, originally sort of the intent of it. But as roofs change over time and we expand what they're being used for, things like habitat, it might allow different funding sources from Metro or from state or federal, instead of relying on just from a stormwater standpoint. And as that continues to happen, as we start changing the typology of roofs, making sure that it's really clearly spelled out from an aesthetic standpoint to clients and developers that, and I think Gabe had a really good point. He said differentiate the difference between roof failure and intentionally brown. And so there are roofs that may be intentionally meant to go brown during the summertime, which happens a lot here, and there may be a reason for that from a habitat standpoint, but people might see that as a failure. So that kind of is geared towards the educational standpoint of helping people understand what they're for. Read through here a little bit. Yeah, I think that's kind of the big gist on it, at least making sense.
Yeah, we also obviously touched on a lot of the same things, but another thing that came up is funding for research and funding for collection of information. And if there is a way to make a broader group of collaboration so that there's someone who can write grants, there's someone from the business side of a university maybe that's talking about funding and setting up a business structure for how you might look at research long-term on a roof to create case studies or on many roofs. And then you get someone who's involved in the research itself, so a university possibly or a research company, and then is involved with an owner or a group of owners and with the installer and with the contractor and the designer. So you set up these large collaborations to make things happen where everyone has interest in creating kind of the same goal. Rather than putting the onus on one specific person, and then the opposite, or one specific group. And then the opposite side of that is, who are the kind of really big players in national, and some of these big corporations are doing eco-roof studies. These are great. This is where we're getting all the information from. How do we get more information from those studies and take the studies that are out there and have that for information for what we're doing here? And then they got into how do we differentiate the amount of information and the feedback, the infrastructure. So what is that feedback infrastructure, and how do we make sure that it isn't so broad that it isn't specific to our market here in the Pacific Northwest anymore? So we talked about what are all the different things that we would like back from the industry, from the built eco-roofs, from case studies. what are the things that we need to know about and the variables. So we have this huge list of variables, including slope and irrigation, how it's irrigated, the soil types, the plant types, the aspect and exposure, the sun, shade, temperature, rainfall, the weight of roofs, the cost of roof, the location, geographical location, different products used, and then how do we get all of the information from existing projects into some form which is kind of across the board equal, apples to apples, so that we can actually make some comparison and educate ourselves and everyone involved in Ecoroofs about all the different ones that are out there now and use them as an education tool, which is helpful to all the different parts. And that's difficult to do. And I think that there's some ideas about, and we want to explore those more, about how do we have lots of different people involved in creating that information, but what is the formwork in which the information goes into? We had a big discussion about irrigation and types of irrigation that work and don't, kind of got into the technical side, which was interesting. We had discussions about trays versus sedum mats versus built-up system by components or proprietary systems, and a lot of questions and interest. And I think those discussions are great to keep going and to have within the group and within the formwork of who the industry is. And then it all kept coming back to education, education, communication, education, communication. And so I think we need to keep figuring out how we can communicate better and like Jason said, be upfront and open about what the message is and how that message is given to and received by everyone in the community.
I apologize now.
And then the light bulb goes off.
I hope that helped.
Do you want to add to that, or do you want me to switch gears?
Should ask for questions from.
Yeah. So I do want to open it up to the audience because I'm sure folks have things to chime in. And I'll just offer one thought that especially having a guest from Toronto and from California, and just being aware, Dan Vizzini's presentation this morning had Green Roofs for Healthy Cities recent survey with all of these cities like DC and Chicago. And, we're all working on green roofs in general, but, some cities like Chicago are implementing so much more per year than we are in Portland. And yet we all are talking about a lot of the same topics: energy, habitat, aesthetics, air quality, and these things. So one of the things that I struggle with is why in Portland we have such a specific difficult time with some of those issues that in some areas we don't, cities don't have as much of a challenge with. And I'd welcome any comments out there, especially people from here, but also folks from out of town. How does a city have a specific agenda, or why is the agenda so specific to that locale? Just an open question. So.
I'm a representative of an AHJ, and before today I really didn't know very much about Ecoroofs. And my suggestion would be in the education part, reach out to the AHJs and offer to educate them about what the benefits are of Ecoroofs and what they are composed of. And by providing that information to some of these AHJs, people like me who are actually in the building industry, but we still haven't been exposed to this yet, I think you'll probably end up having an easier time getting your projects approved in these municipalities by having more educated people who know what's going on in these roofs.
Gotcha. AHJ? Okay. Authority, housing, jurisdiction, municipality.
Authority having jurisdiction.
Oh, authority having jurisdiction. So the response was that doing more outreach to those groups and education to those groups would help. Okay.
So if I can just ask, the AHJs, is that all within one organization, or are you spread across?
Tri-county area who meet and they discuss relevant issues regarding the building industry and permitting and processing. And I would suggest you reach out to them and I'm sure that they would be happy to hear from you, maybe even have some appointment presentation or something.
Great.
But I think that would be a great way to educate people more in the municipality area so that you have an easier time getting your projects built.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Another comment? Okay. So,
I just wanted to respond to your
Sure.
your Portland specific question, and it's one of those things that we talked about a lot in Grit, and particularly the Green Roofs for Healthy Cities scorecard list, which is always kind of something you laugh at because it's like, why are we never on there? It's like one of those things, are we neglected for whatever reason? Part of it is like Portland is a small market, and it's never going to compete with the number of square foot of Ecoroof as Chicago or DC or other areas. What we do and what we do best and what we've done forever is we innovate. So all these other cities are going to do probably more square footage of us, but they're going to keep looking to what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're doing it better. So we should be looking at what the next phase and its habitat or better eco-roofs or better cost or whatever. And that's what Portland's contribution is going to be, not, you know, 1 million square feet of green roof a year, because we're going to do less, but we're going to do it a lot better. So that's what we do. So
Because we want to keep within our urban growth boundary and keep our existing building stock. We don't want to become a giant city. We want to show by example. We take freeways out of our downtown. We build light rail. We're innovators, and bigger cities do copy us. And that's a great point, that we're not in competition. We're feeding that industry, and we need to share.
Well, I also, along those lines, I've noticed during Doug's presentation that, I mean, he was talking about why can't we, you know, do this, do a mandate or achieve the same, you know, square footage of the city with the mandate, but actually, I kept looking at his chart and the amount that Portland's already installed was up to like half of what I think was Stuttgart had installed with a mandate longstanding. So I think that says Portland's actually doing extremely well, and I agree with you that coming from outside of the state, people do see Portland as an innovator, and you know, particularly on green infrastructure and green roofs. So good to see what you guys are doing.
I have a quick question, just in general, throw it out there. In the first presentation this morning, we talked about there being a gap, and I'm wondering from a policy standpoint, the Ecoroof incentive program is great, but from a policy standpoint, what do we, as Portlanders, aspire to do in the next 5 to 10 years to really grow that so that we get into the railway adopter and was early adopter and get it out widespread, because like you said, people look to Portland as an innovative city. What can we do from a policy standpoint to really affect that type of change? And I'm speaking specifically to system development charges. That's one of the things we hear from developers all the time, is that the system development charge or system development, fees, they're really high here compared to places like Seattle.
Sure. So the question is referencing Dan Vizzini's presentation this morning, going from an early adopter to what's the next classification, Dan? Maybe regular practitioner, let's say. How do we get over that gap? Speaking policy-wise. So, anyone want to speak to that? Comment on that? Tessa.
I think I was, from the different presentations today, the argument for green roofs so far, mainly in Portland, has been stormwater, which I think was in part triggered by salmon. And it's environmental, you know, everybody wants to do it, but when it comes down to the bottom line, it's what's your fear of cost, maintenance, technology. And bringing in Teresa and talking about health and switching the hierarchy, if we it's almost like if we realign the hierarchy to also be about environment, but environmental health, not only for other animals, but for ourselves if climate changes. You know, people are more likely to respond to something that threatens them than something that threatens the environment. It's just that much more removed. So maybe starting to reframe and enlarge the scope of sort of the argument for greeners of addressing, you know, our individual health, and then, you know, talking with Courtney about then linking that to the habitat health and then the larger environmental systems health. And as soon as you link that to individual health, I think you have a better chance of informing policy and making larger change.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't know much about green roofs or the policies or the politics or the personalities here, but I think in my old age I'm learning a little bit more about why people do and don't do things. And if everything that someone says or does is because at a conscious or unconscious level they're trying to meet their unmet needs, and they're using strategies usually that don't work or that backfire, then what we can look at, well, what are the needs that are screaming out? You know, and what we're hearing in the media and what we're seeing in addictions and people complaining about is they're really wanting to connect with other people. They're really wanting to feel their life has meaning and purpose. They're wanting to feel powerful and effective. They're wanting to feel joy. They're wanting to feel connected with God and nature and something good, a bigger scene. Well, we all have the same needs. Maybe I'm prioritizing the safety of my children, and maybe they're prioritizing having autonomy from the horrid mother. But we all have the same basic needs, and we prioritize at different times. So let's focus on what people care about most, and not in a sales pitch manipulation lie, but show the true, honest connections. I think that having all of our surfaces be more like nature, where we're growing, we have green walls and roofs that collect energy and water and clean our air and make the place more food and everything. I think that's just inspired and it's right for everybody. So none of our needs conflict. We just show how doing something good and right feels good and right and makes everything else work good and right. It's an easy connect. And earlier, our first presenter was talking about, Tim just kept nagging me. Well, it's relationships. It's one inspired person that connects with what matters to us. And, you know, I can talk to 5 people. I don't need to know about green roofs, but I can find what matters to them and connect them to you, and you can do that with 5 people. I think that's where we need to focus back on why do people do what they do and why don't they do. And we can do that. You all know how to empathize and reason.
One thing just that brought me to think about, which coincidentally, as we're getting closer to the end of the day, is that the theme of this entire symposium was about return on investment. And what I think I'm hearing from you is what a lot of us have been saying for a long time. It's come on, everybody. It's obvious. It's good. But at some point, you reach a point in the dialogue where you need to start explaining the benefits, and you need to start showing that value. And so one of the things that I hope we as a group get from this is starting to be able to talk about things like public health and aesthetic and habitat value and those things in terms of in units that we can actually start talking about as valuable. And expressing why that's valuable is probably one of the things that we have to do more. And maybe that's where we're saying kind of the same thing. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what else. Tom?
Well, I'm thinking of all these comments, and what comes to mind is and sort of going back to, I think, Jason's comment about, and others, about us being innovators. So we're not in a race to have the most vegetative roofs in the world, but we have this idea of innovation. So perhaps if we got this started from stormwater and it's been on its way, and there's many other important issues to bring to this, isn't our next step then, if we're really innovators, how do we help show how to take the next step? I don't know what that step is, but that seems to be filling that gap that Dan showed in his chart. That we've reached this point. What do we do? We've got $5 a square foot. We've got zoning ordinances. We've got various other. There's lots of incentives. But what do we do next? And Dan alluded to something. Some of the other speakers alluded to some things that could be done. But maybe that's our challenge: is what are those things that we can do that will help us get into that, beyond that gap or something, and then share that with the nation, and so that because those two big cities, they are different in a way that is not like most of the cities in the United States, and I consider us more like most of the cities from the standpoint of size and things like that.
I think one of the things that's really stood out for me has been interaction. And there's been a couple of comments that you can look but you don't touch the Ecoroof because you'll damage it by walking on it too much. But when we had the presentation talking about the healing properties of the green roof and so on, or of a garden rather, I think that's really important, especially as more people continue moving into cities and into more dense neighborhoods. There's less opportunity for people to have the classic suburban backyard where they can do their gardening and so on. So what I'm seeing is that next step is to prioritize making the green roofs interactable and a new living space, and remove the roof from the green roof, because right now a roof is just something that people stand under to keep the rain off their head. We need to, I think, put it out there as more than just that. It's now your backyard as well. And that's where I think Portland can innovate and move forward and really prove that.
I wanted to say I agree with these guys. I'm here because my boss is interested in getting a green roof and wants to know if it's worth anything. And there are two things that drive him, and one of them is the numbers. I mean, he likes to know that he's going to get some value out of it, but he also likes to be a part of things. He likes to be a leader. He likes to, be a step ahead of people. He likes to kind of be involved. And I think before this conversation, or before this symposium, I've never been on a green roof. I've never really seen one, honestly. I know a lot about them, and I've always supported them, but I've learned so much here. But before this, I knew nothing about them. I think maybe if you opened up some of those green roofs that are around this city and people had a chance to participate and see the value, have a picnic on one, or and look over the city or something like that, I think it's more tangible for people, more than numbers. And so, yes, I agree. I think that's participation is really important. And you can shout at people on a bullhorn or send them pamphlets in the mail, or even put information on a website all you want. But if people don't feel like they have a voice or they're involved, then it's meaningless.
Can I comment on that real quick? The Green Roof Info Think Tank does, during the summer months, we do monthly tours, or we try to do monthly tours of green roofs, open to anybody who wants to come within a limit of, depending on the roof, 20, 30, 50 people. So check out GRIT, Green Roof Info Think Tank.
We're also going to do some events where we're helping weed roofs and helping maintain as volunteers. So that's a great way to learn about a roof and be involved and have a barbecue and drink beer afterwards. So.
Yeah, always beer involved.
Let's go back here. I kind of you're on the tipping point there. I think decision makers as a whole are looking at ROI most definitely, and how do I pay for this? But I also think we're going to see a tipping point where more green roofs are being built, when it's just like at your home. When you see your neighbor's yard looks a certain way, you want to emulate that. And I think when decision makers are seeing more and more successful projects and able to go out and actually stand on one they're going to feel more confident and pulling the trigger and saying, yeah, let's do 10,000 square feet of green roof. So it's how do we continue to, over the lifetime of these roofs, make them successful, not just the pretty picture at the beginning part of that project, but how can we show them in person?
I have a suggestion, and could people, by a show of hands, show how many people are interested in going and seeing an Ecoroof? If we were to set up a tour, or 2 or 3 or 4 people who've attended it. Go.
I heard over 200 people saying they want to do it, whether or not I want to schedule.
All right.
I said earlier this morning that I really debated whether to show that bar chart of the other cities. My goal is not to try and beat out those cities. My goal is to make this city, the quality of life in this city, as great as it can be, and make the city as resilient as it can be. And eco-roofs are clearly, although I didn't think this 5 years ago, I think eco-roofs are clearly part of that picture, that we have to have them because they make the city more resilient. The density, the urban growth boundary actually drives, in my mind, the need for more eco-roofs for precisely the reason that stated, that the closer we live together, the more green we need, the more nature we need. And bringing gardens and growing food on roofs and making roofs green and making our neighborhoods green is absolutely critical to making density work. And density is absolutely critical to, I think, the future of the state. So I wanted to be clear about that. In terms of propagation, one way to think about propagation is to look at the networks that already exist and try and figure out how to expand the reach of those networks beyond their own boundaries. So you have networks in the supply side. Imagine a map that had on one end of it, or a schematic on one end of it, you had all of the supply chain that leads to an eco-roof being created. And then in the value chain are all of the people who have eco-roofs. Well, both of those represent networks. And what we need to do is, we have the industry in this room talking. They have networks of their own. Many of them totally uninvolved. They could be on softball teams or at church groups. On the value side of the equation, we have people who have installed eco-roofs. We have businesses that are maintaining eco-roofs. And we need to animate their stories and animate their networks and reach beyond their boundaries of their sort of business life to move greater into the community. It's that kind of propagation, having a conversation that talks about what this community could be, what it could look like, how this is a part of it, that will get us across the chasm. The decision ultimately will be, and then I guess there's one other piece, and that is, we definitely have to change the way we do business accounting in government and in the private sector. We need to shift to triple bottom line accounting for our decision making. And then ROI would be a no-brainer. And we need to do that in ways that are, I mean, one area of lobbying that needs to be done and policy that needs to be done is in the area of accountability. Both corporate social responsibility, type accountability, and government accountability in terms of injecting the triple bottom line. If we can do that, and we can continue to have this conversation in positive ways about what this could be, then people will make the decision. And I guess there's one last thing, and that is opportunity. So what I said was, we need to get to the properties before they redevelop. We need to get to the properties when they're in stress, when they're depreciated, and have conversations with property owners. We have to be kind of tactical about actually going out and having conversations with property owners about what their properties could look like when redeveloped. And what my research suggested is we've got thousands of properties that are poised over the next 30 years that we could take to the next level.
I think we have an opportunity here to innovate by thinking about green roofs and eco roofs not just as their own insular thing, but as parts of larger systems and larger communities. And so that can mean thinking of a green roof as part of a habitat corridor for birds and insects. It could mean thinking about green roofs as part of stormwater management, which is already a big focus. Also, green roofs as part of urban ag or community gardens, as part of healthcare, as part of sort of cutting edge green design. So I think sort of keying into these groups of people that are already excited about other things that green roofs fit into, rather than just thinking about the roof by itself in isolation.
Here. I just had a thought that Portland Public Schools are throughout the city in desperate need of seismic upgrade. They've got years of deferred maintenance, and they're to a point where something is desperately needed to happen. And it seems like pairing up green roofs with those upgrades and repairs seems like a natural fit for having a citywide conversation and bringing these educational benefits, to kind of kids of all ages as when they're in the process of learning and sort of really getting that message out citywide.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in our group. There's the woman is from Franklin High School. Yeah. And we were talking about the synergy of, the educational aspect, the ability to have kids learning while they're planting, building, maintaining, all of those things, learning about systems. And that would be a great challenge to take on. Could you think about something that's, woefully underfunded and deferred maintenance? And how would you not just get to that deferred maintenance, but do it in a way that makes it all better?
Yeah, if you're going to spend the money anyway, spend a little bit more and get a ton more benefit.
Right.
Well, assuming that the roof's safe, like the kids could then do maintenance. We've talked about so much about maintenance costs, but that's a perfect group to be enthusiastic to continue to maintain the roof and learn to keep doing it.
Bert, you had one?
One of the key slides for me was that people perceived that global warming could hurt the environment, but they didn't perceive that it would hurt them, which says ultimately that we perceive ourselves as separate from nature. And I think that we need to reframe this issue in terms of biophilia, that we are a part of nature, and that this is not about stormwater, it's not about salmon, it is about us. And part of the way we do that is to be a part of it, to connect with nature, to interact with it, and see ourselves as part of that system. And I think if we reframe the discussion to make eco-roofs a part of us, and we teach our children to interact with them and start connecting with systems again, the eco-roofs will move more forward.
It's interesting, I heard the discussion about schools because for the last 5 years I've teamed up with Tremco in Canada. Tremco built me a green roof that's ground level, and we take it to these educational festivals, energy or water, and I do a 15-minute, half-hour workshop on green roofs, and it's incredible how excited the kids get. Now, if you could compare that, so in 30 minutes, you can basically teach them all they need to know to get them excited about the green roof, and if you could actually pair that with this, the deferred maintenance idea, I can show you how to Tremco. If Tremco here will do the same thing, I can try to do basically, you can educate a classroom in about 15 to 30 minutes. You get the educational component, and then they know the green roof is coming. And that really is, because once you do it, and you say, imagine a green roof on your school, they all get really excited, of course, and then go back to the school the next day, and there's no green roof. So, I mean, this could be a wonderful pairing, and like I said, the partnerships can be made to really go beyond just the maintenance part, but actually right into the classroom. In fact, you could use that basic idea and go to any community event. And the beauty of this is the green roof is, everybody can see, because it's a green roof that's at ground level, and it's mobile. So it can be transported from event to event. And whether the event is energy or water or urban agriculture, you then have this mobile platform that you can use to really get that message out fairly easily once you have the people.
I'd like to tie that into the education is one of these main things we're talking about, and education of that generation. You know, we talked about why. Well, now education of this next generation, these are the people who are going to be making the real change. These are the people who are going to be the society which has eco-roofs as the norm. So if the earlier you can get them to adapt that, i.e. in their prime years of education and learning, and become a normal of eco-roofs are just normal. Like, many of us didn't grow up with computers as normal, but now they're normal. The kids can run through their iPhone, you know, quicker than any of us. And that's the group which we really should target. And we're probably leaving out of the picture because we talked to the owners and the people who are actually kind of retiring out of this idea. So I think that's really great. That should be the focus of a big part of education, is our education system and young people.
We're going to do 2 more comments, and then we're going to wrap it up. Edie, I imagine you're going to mention your project. It's a perfect time, too.
But I was thinking that Portland has many fun, unique things. We have these strange cars that have these super glued or sculpture monsters all over them, all over town. And we could have Ecoroof kind of cars. I was promoting Dennis Kucinich, and I had a big magnet under my roof, and then over my roof with the big, like a pizza sign. But you could have a little, seen from both sides, little Ecoroof, you know, sort of like that. We have the tea cart that goes to all these different events, and it spreads out this kind of funny, hippie space. You could have a fold-out Ecoroof demonstration low for people to see. We have bicycles that will do, you know, home grocery tours or whatever else. And you could have a bicycle trailer Ecoroof, you know. So what I mean is, there's lots of things that we do that are unique, like we have poetry posts out in your front yard. We do unusual things here in Portland that we could build on in communicating what Ecoroof is, and since you gave me the permission. At Franklin High School in Southeast Portland, we're trying to build a small bus shelter, outdoor, multiple enclosed bulletin board display, and kind of art exhibit area for the kids. For next spring's dedication of our 100-year anniversary and dedicating our shop to a recently deceased teacher, and to talk about stormwater stewardship and our planned solar panels and eco panels and aquaponics and hydroponics and food gardens and everything. And so for this little structure, we want help with designing and building and funding. We have zero money, and having kids involved in that, so that this becomes an outreach inspiring other people, and that we could have a website and curriculum so that people in Canada, the United States, with different ecosystems or whatever, don't have to reinvent the wheel on teaching about eco-roofs and sustainability and how it all fits together, that we can give them the curriculum. We can give them some videotapes about you folks and how you decided to use it in your construction or your business or your, you know, that we can pull the whole community of family together and just hug each other as we develop this.
One last comment there.
I guess the one thing that, as I hear everyone talk about schools and education and innovation, that occurs to me is, it seems like in a lot of ways we're sort of preaching to the choir. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to continue moving the discussion forward, we have to figure out all the people who aren't interested, involved. They're the ones who need to come and see the GRIT tours. And it doesn't need to even be a tour. It should just be, come and hang out on this Ecoroof and have a visit, and we're going to do a show or whatever it is.
Bring a date.
You know, and exactly, just come and experience this space and see what it's done for this community, as opposed to trying to sell something.
Right, sure.
And for me, that I think is a huge opportunity, is to figure out how to do that better, because not everybody goes to the web to look for this information. And if we're going to propagate it more, we need to make it less of a sales pitch, I guess is what I'm trying to get.
But how do you reach those people? That's the part that's been so hard.
Have a movie on the Ecoroof.
Okay.
Have a band on the Ecoroof. Have a circus on the Ecoroof.
I work in the arts, and so a great opportunity would be to try and see if there are artists in town who would want to work
at a facility that has an Ecoroof, one of these buildings that the Girding folks operate. Maybe there's a way to do a show there during the summertime. Or, I mean, that's how you get to different communities, is you engage them. So, I mean, to me, that's the other way. And obviously, children is a huge opportunity as well.
Postmatch.com on
Listen, everyone, I want to stop it here. I want to. It's a perfect opportunity to let's end on that note. I do want to thank you all so much for staying through the day, and I want to give a big thanks to our panelists and everybody that took part in the breakout sessions. And I also want to very much thank Dan Vizzini this morning for speaking, Dean Marriott, Kirsten Weeks, Teresia Hasen, Brian Bainson, Ed McNamara, Renee Loveland, Chad Sorber, and Dr. Brad Bass. Thank you guys so much for participating. And please come out to the vendor showcase and join us and hang out and enjoy the sun. It's a beautiful day. Thanks, everyone, for being here today.